class study. It's as our brother Richard said, it's not often that you have a Roman soldier come and talk to you for the Bible class. I'm dressed like this tonight because what I want to show you, when we read Ephesians 6, is Paul, in his captivity, knew what a Roman soldier looked like. From his point of view, it was a very good, or it is a very good metaphor for our walk to the kingdom. And every aspect of what the Roman soldier wore is useful for us in our walk to the kingdom. So what I want to do tonight is to show you what a Roman soldier actually looked like. Because whilst Paul and the brothers and sisters at Ephesus, I mean, we've got to remember that Ephesus was a cauldron. It was a multicultural city. It was quite a volatile city. It would have been full of Roman soldiers. So the brothers and sisters at Ephesus, when they read Paul's letter, they would understand fully what he was talking about. Now, I guess if you talked about a policeman, you would know what that would look like. And that's equivalent to what he's doing. Of course, we don't see policemen around very often, not as often as Paul would have seen a Roman soldier. So, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to spend the first 20 minutes or so looking at the equipment of a Roman soldier, understanding how that worked, and then we'll look at Ephesians chapter 6. And I'm hoping by the end of this evening that whenever you read Ephesians chapter 6 again, you'll never read it in quite the same light as you've read it this evening. So let's just start talking about what a Roman citizen and a Roman soldier looked like and what they wore. Here I am in my underclothes. This is my undergarment. This is my subuncula, my undergarment, my vest. It's made out of linen, and it made the woolen garments comfortable to wear. I have around my neck my focali, which is the beginning of the tie, I guess, very early on. And its job here is to sop up the sweat around my neck, and also to give me a little bit of protection from my armour. I have to say, if I met a real Roman soldier from the first century, he would frown at me at this point. I am wearing subuncula. No, sorry, this is subuncula. I'm wearing focali. Very fetching. So these focali, sorry, not focali. This is the focali, this is the subuncula, and these are feminalia. Feminalia, not because they're for a female, but because they cover the femur. So these were short trousers, which later on, after Paul's time, the Roman soldier might have worn. Certainly in this country. The Roman soldiers, when they came to Britannia, they kind of frowned at the locals for wearing trousers. Only barbarians wore trousers, and then they went to Scotland and they wore trousers. There's actually a lovely letter that was found in Vindolanda. If you ever get a chance to go to Vindolanda and look at some of the hundreds of tablets that were found, there's a lovely letter from a mother from elsewhere that says, "Dear son, I'm sending you socks because it's cold where you are." And because of that letter, we know that mothers cared about their soldier children, and also that it was cold and they wore socks. On my feet, I have caligae. These are the Roman boots. They're the Roquefort of the Roman times. They are very expensive Roman boots. They are not sandals. In the summer, they were open-toed. I guess they looked like sandals. In the winter, I can undo the lace, put a rabbit skin around my foot, and keep my feet warm in the winter. When it gets to spring, then I'll take the rancid rabbit foot out and throw it away, and then I've got sandals. They're actually very comfortable to wear. And the advantage of them, if you walk through water, is that they drain very quickly and they dry very quickly. Gravel, however, is a nightmare in your feet. Underneath this, if I can just do a little bit of a pirouette, there are 80 studs in the bottom of each boot. And that meant that they would last a long time. You could walk for miles and miles in them. We once did an event where we went up at Annan Castle in Scotland, went up a very strong, long, grassy slope into a castle. And with these boots on, they're like football boots. They grip the grass very steadfast. However, on a school-polished floor, not quite so good. So, this is what I would have worn underneath. Now, here is a Roman citizen's tunica. And I've stressed that for a particular reason. This tunica can only be worn by a Roman citizen. The two blue stripes are called clavii. And actually, in the Roman times, they would have been woven into the fabric. These are sewn over the top of it, because it's just so expensive to have cloth woven in this fashion. But it would have actually been woven into the fabric. You wore this on pain of death if you were not a Roman citizen. Only Roman citizens could wear the clavii. Now, I know from events that I've done that you can see somebody wearing clavii half a mile away, quite literally. Let me ask you a question. Paul, when he was arrested by the Roman centurion, when he was about to be beaten, tells them that he's a Roman citizen. They didn't know he was a Roman citizen. You can see these half a mile away. So can I suggest that Paul, in his walk, in his belief, in his faith, had ditched the Roman citizenship and wore a plain tunica where it wasn't obvious that he was actually a citizen of Rome, because he wanted to be known as a citizen of Christ. So here's my Roman tunica. It's made out of wool. And you'll notice it goes all the way down to my feet. Very convenient for going to sleep at night. All I have to do at night is take my belt off and I'm ready for bed. In the morning, all I need to do is gird my loins. So by the simple application of a belt, I then can become a fashionable Roman citizen. At the moment, I wouldn't have walked out like this. A Roman soldier wanted to look fashionable in the 1st century, apparently. The tunica should be about knee length at the front and just a little bit longer at the back. So now, I'm ready to march. I'm ready for the day. What it does is it leaves me with a big wad round my waist, and you'll see why that's important in a second. Next thing I need is my armour. I'm going to turn you into archaeological experts tonight. Okay, I guarantee you are going to predict correctly some of the answers that I'm going to ask you in a minute. Here is my Roman armour. This is Lorica segmentata. Now, we know that the Romans called armour lorica. We don't know what they called this. It was the Victorians who named it segmentata, because it's made out of segments. But this was only ever worn for about 80 years. I'm going to ruin any Roman film for you in the future. This was worn from about AD 30 to 120 AD. It's about 80 years it was worn for. Before that, kind of Julius Caesar time, they wore chainmail, lorica hamata. After this, they went back to chainmail. So when it gets to the time of the film of Gladiators in 350 AD, they were wearing chainmail again. This was only worn at the time of Christ and the time of Paul and a little bit afterwards. So it's quite likely that Paul would have known this sort of armour. It's made out of metal segments, and it's all held together by strips of leather inside. One thing I ought to say, actually, I meant to say about the boots, is the strips in here and the boots are made out of pigskin, because pigskin is cheap and hard wearing. Can you understand now when Herod marched the Roman legions into the temple that he knew what he was doing when the Jews rioted, and then he gets carte blanche to put them down with violence by marching Roman soldiers into the temple wearing pigskin boots? Now, Richard, I'm going to need a bit of help here. I can't put the armour on my own. I need help. It's not to just pick that up. That's lovely. And if you could get the back strap done up. Now, I've discovered over the years a strange property of metal.
Just the one.
Yeah, it's fine. It shrinks. I really don't understand. When I had this made for me about 15 years ago, it fitted really easily, and it seems that over time it's shrunk. Now, down the front here, I'm not going to do all of these up because you'd be sitting there all night watching me do it. I'm just going to do a couple up. These would have been tied up together, which holds all the armour nice and rigid and tight. It clearly gives the soldier extremely good protection. Now, if you think to the Roman times, that actually, certainly at the time of Paul, nobody else had this. No other army used armour like this. So it actually made them pretty invulnerable. It clearly protects your front and it protects your back. Protects my shoulders. I am pretty much fully protected. The only place I'm not protected is my armpit. And the Roman soldiers were trained never to lift their arms. So they wouldn't raise a sword like this because they knew that it exposed the armpit, which is actually a direct route to the heart. They were always trained to keep their arms low and thrust with their sword. This is made out of mild steel. The Romans would have used iron, but we think by the time that they had actually taken iron and beat it into metal plates, it pretty much becomes steel with the amount of carbon that they would have used from the charcoal to make their steel plate. It rusts. It rusts incredibly quickly. The first time I did a show wearing this, I'd spent a week cleaning and polishing it, and I left it out in a shower of rain. And when I came back out, it was orange. It rusts ever so quickly. The leather straps inside need to be oiled regularly to keep them supple. If they don't, they become brittle and they break. And I've had it happen to me where a strap was broken and the whole armour plate just opens up and makes it useless. So two things, brothers and sisters, about this armour. One, I needed help to put it on. We've just sung, put on the whole armour of Christ. You can't do that on your own. And also, it needs to be maintained. I can't just put it on and wear it and wear it and wear it. I've got to look after it. I have to maintain it for it to keep its integrity. This armour, for those of you of my age and a little bit older, when we were at school, the Roman armour was different to this. The illustrations were different to this. They were actually based on Trajan's column, which was the only written record or drawn record that people had of what armour looked like. It doesn't actually work if you make, people who've tried to make replicas of the armour on Trajan's column, it doesn't work. In 1964, in Newstead in Scotland, 1964 in Corbridge, just south of Scotland, there was a fort. And in 1964, an archaeologist lifted a large slab. And underneath that slab, they found the remains of an oak chest. And in that oak chest, they found this armour. Well, not this particular armour. This is a modern replica, but the original of this. And they found this plus lots of other examples of this. And clearly what had happened was the armourer, the village was under attack. The armourer had got his box already underground. He threw all his armour into that, covered it with a slab, but never returned. And it was 2,000 years later that it was unearthed. And with some very careful archaeological preservation, they managed to take it apart. And from that, we were able to make replicas of it. So this is called Corbridge armour. Okay? This is actually Corbridge A, because it's got leather straps here. Corbridge B has got brass hooks. So if you ever come across a Roman soldier, have a look at his armour and you can tell whether it's Corbridge A or Corbridge B. In Newstead in Scotland, they did find another type of armour, but actually the breastplates locked together and they didn't have all these straps. And that's called Newstead armour. Okay. Archaeologists aren't known for their creativity. So the next thing I'm going to put on is a sword. This is the gladius. It's where we get the gladioli from, or the name from. This is the Pompeii blade. Guess where they found it? There's another blade called the Mainz blade, which is kind of leaf-shaped. But this is the Pompeii blade. It's 22-inch double-edged sword, 2 inches wide, 22 inches long. It's a stabbing weapon. It's designed to stab with. This goes over my right shoulder. Now you might be surprised at that because most people think of swords being over the left shoulder so that you can pull it out easily with your right hand. Roman soldiers were right-handed. I would pull the sword from this hand. But I have a problem because as I lift the sword, the scabbard comes with it. So I need something else. I need Richard again. This is my belt. This is going to bind it all together. This is a Cingulum Militaire, a military belt. Nobody knows what the jangly bit round the front's for. It doesn't protect anything. It just makes a nice jingly jangly noise. Right. I need you, Richard, to get this as far up that strap as possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Give me a challenge.
It is a challenge. Right. I'll hold that bit round the front. I'll breathe in.
Is that even going to go?
I'll breathe in a bit more. Go on. Use your strength. Done it?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
A bit more.
It's going blue.
That's some more out of this.
How you doing?
Get in there.
Get in there. Right. Pull hard. Don't worry about me. I'll just go red. It fitted last week. And I haven't had too many cream buns since then. Right, you got it?
There, you're there.
You're there. Hey. Well done. Right. So, I've now got the Kingdom on. On this side, I have a dagger. This is a Puggio, and it's designed as a last resort weapon. It would have also been used for peeling your apples and cutting your cheese and whatever else. But that's a very clever design. They've got a little diamond in here, this kind of shape there. And what it actually does is it fits very, very snugly into your hand. So it's never going to slip. You get a really good, strong grip on that. But now with the sword, you see, as I pull the sword now, the sheath isn't going to come with it. It's now held down. And what the Cingulum does Remember that wad of wool I talked about around my waist? It's probably why it doesn't fit very well, actually. It's probably too much wool. What it's now doing is the weight of the armour is now mainly on my waist. A bit like a modern rucksack, where you have a belt to take the weight off your shoulders, transfers it to the waist. So it works really well together. So the cingulum, what this does is it binds everything together. This is a Gallic D. Guess where they found it? In Gaul. It's Gallic D helmet. This is a cassis, a Roman helmet. It's designed to protect my head. I'm also glad to know. By the way, Romans didn't wear glasses. But I'm afraid if I don't wear glasses, you guys, you just become a blur. So if you'll excuse the anachronistic glasses, I shall continue to wear my glasses. One of the reasons why I gave up reenacting was because I couldn't see anything. And of course the Romans didn't have glasses. Right, so this ties up and it binds the helmet to my head. So the helmet is very, very much part of me. Now you can see, almost fully armoured, that my head is protected, the back of my neck is protected, my arms are, my body is. One last thing. This is the Roman scutum. Everybody else in the first century had flat shields, mainly made out of planks of wood. And one of the problems with a flat shield is that A, it will split, and secondly, it actually leaves your body unprotected because it's out here, whereas the scutum hugs round me. This is plywood. The Romans made plywood shields. And what they did was they felled a tree and then they would split it into very thin pieces of wood. And they would nail wood around the tree trunk and then glue strips lengthwise, about 5 layers, perpendicular, making a very, very strong circular shield. It was unique to the Romans. On the back, there is one handle. Just one in the middle. No straps. I can't strap it to my arm like the Normans did and carry a shield around on my arm. If I want the shield, I have to pick it up and I have to carry it. One hand, my left hand. The Romans had to be right-handed for the sword. You couldn't have somebody who was left-handed. So if you were left-handed, you learned to be right-handed. Just out of interest, if you're left-handed, left is sin. Sinistrosum, to turn left. It's where we get the word sinister from. Left-handed people were suspicious. They were sinister people. Dextrosum is right. You were dexterous if you were right-handed. So all Romans had to be right-handed. Romans were trained with the shield, double-weight shield and a double-weight sword. Every day a Roman soldier was expected to train for 4 hours with a shield twice its normal weight and a sword twice its normal weight. And Tacitus, he tells us that in the battle, the Romans actually liked battle because it was a sweatless exercise. All of a sudden their shield was lightweight because it was half the weight of what they were used to. And that's why they trained with a double-weight sword. They would be trained to use this as an offensive weapon. It wasn't just for defense. Now you can see when I pick it up just how much of me this covers. There is very, very little left of me for an enemy to attack. And now you'll see why the sword's on the right-hand side. With the scutum, had it been on my left-hand side, to draw it, I've got to move the shield to draw the sword. With the sword on the right-hand side, I can just draw it straight from that. And imagine I've got my colleagues on my left-hand side and on my right-hand side. In Daniel, we read of the fourth beast with its iron teeth and its iron claws, stamping over the nations. It's a perfect simile for the Romans, or perfect metaphor for the Romans. Imagine a row of teeth, of iron teeth. And on my feet, I've got those iron studs to trample over my enemy. Throughout the scriptures, whenever you see iron, it often refers to the Romans. A couple of last things before we look at the scriptures. For cold weather, I have my painula. This is a cloak which goes over me. And the hood is big enough to go over my helmet as well. An essential piece of kit for the Roman soldier when he's not in battle. It's his blanket. It's his waterproof. He needed this cloak to keep him warm and to protect him. And the final thing is this. Now this is a light version. I haven't brought all the kit that I normally bring with all of this. But there's normally buckets and saucepans and clothes and all sorts of things that go onto this. This is called a furka. It's a carrying pole. Everything together with the bag, the sakina, and everything else, the Romans called it impedimenta. It's where we get our word impede from. This isn't mentioned in Ephesians, neither is the cloak. And I'll explain now why I think that's the case. So, if you'd like to turn to Ephesians chapter 6. What we're going to do for the rest of the evening is to look now from what we've learnt this evening about the equipment to reading Ephesians chapter 6 and what we can learn about our walk towards the kingdom. I'm using the New King James Version. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armour of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Well, you realise now that that's not quite as easy as it sounds. Why does Paul tell us to put on the whole armour of God? Why do we need to put clothes on at all? Because, brothers and sisters, we've taken off our worldly citizenship at baptism. We've laid aside our worldly ownership of whatever country we were born in. At baptism we are washed clean and we put on the whole armour of God. And this armour is designed for us to walk in our walk towards the kingdom, however long that walk might be. But Paul's exhorting us and telling us, in order to have a successful walk, in order to withstand all the trials and tribulations that will beset you on your walk, like the Roman soldier, you need to be clad in the armour of God. And so we're told to put it on. Verse 13, therefore take up the whole armour of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. That's one of the things that a Roman soldier had to do. The Roman soldier had 4 duties. 1 Corinthians chapter 16 tells us that we should watch, stand fast, be brave, be strong. That's what a Roman soldier had to do. To stand, be brave, be strong, and watch. And so we are told to put it on. Now, as you saw, I couldn't do that on my own. I can't put on the armour of God by myself. I needed help. And there's our exhortation, isn't it? That the first help we need is from our Lord Jesus Christ. Our Lord Jesus is there to help us in putting on the whole armour of God. And by extension, we have our brethren and sisters, our brothers and sisters who help us on our day-to-day walk. We help each other to maintain and put on that armour. We need each other. Alone, we become vulnerable. Verse 14. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness. So here we have this breastplate of righteousness that protects us front and back, that will help us in our army, in our war. But it rusts. It falls apart. It has to be maintained. So we have to maintain our righteousness. We have to work at polishing it and keeping it righteousness. Keeping it clean. Keeping it serviceable. It isn't something we can just put on and ignore. It's something we have to work at day by day, week by week. And if you think about the metaphor, here we have this kingdom, this belt. We are girded about with truth. What does the truth do? It binds everything together. It binds our righteousness. It binds everything that we have. It makes it work. The truth makes it possible for us to carry the weight of the whole armour of God. It makes it possible for us to be able to draw our sword and use it when we need it. Verse 15. Having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Ephesians talks a lot about walking, doesn't it? Just look back in the previous chapter. In chapter 4 we've got, look, we walk in unity. Verse 1. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you to walk worthy of the calling with which you were called. Chapter 5 and verse 8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light, and in the Lord walk as children of the light. Verse 15. See that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Over and over again, Paul writes about our walk to the kingdom. That's why we need the whole armour of God, to help us in our walk to the kingdom. And our feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. We can rely on our footwear. You know, the Roman soldier, we reckon that with all the weight of all of this, the impedimenta, the shield, the armour, everything else that the soldier had to carry, we reckon they were carrying about 100 pounds of weight of equipment every time that they marched. If you were on the march in the morning, you would have to demolish the temporary camp that you built, including the walls that you built up. The whole camp would be flattened. They would march. That's so that the enemy couldn't use the fort that you'd built. You'd march 20 miles with a pack of 100 pounds. At the end of that march, you'd build another fort. You wouldn't go to sleep until you were protected by a fort. So the Roman soldiers had to make sure that the shoes that they were wearing were long-lasting, steadfast, sure-footed, because they would have to walk a long way each day. We don't know how long we have to walk for, do we? We hope and pray that it's not much further. But we never know when the Lord will return. So we have to be shod with this gospel, with these feet, with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So that we can walk worthy. We can walk in the light. Verse 16. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you're able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. Just think about the shield for a minute. Here's this scutum. Here's this curved shield that wraps around me. It doesn't just go in front of me, but it wraps around me. Look on the front of it. Look on the front of the shield. All the Roman shields had similar emblems as this. It has the wings of an eagle. And we think of the psalmist talking about the wings of the eagle. John 3:16, to mount up as the wings of the eagle. We think of the references to us being a refuge and a strength. The shield, the scutum, wrapped around you like the wings of an eagle. It gives you the salvation, the protection as it wraps around you. But think about this also. This shield of faith that we have. Have we got a CYC leader here? CYC leader? No? Yes? Do you do sword practice at CYC?
Without tongues.
Hopefully with your Bibles. When I was at CYC, when I was a little boy, 30 years ago, and a bit, we used to do sword practice every CYC. One of the activities was always sword practice. And I think as a people, we've lost that a little bit, haven't we? We used to be able to come up with the quotations just like that. To defend our faith, we knew the quotations. We knew where the books were in the Bible. At CYC they would say, Exodus chapter 16. Go through the Bible. First person to get there. Put your hand up. Obadiah chapter 16. Well, maybe chapter 4. And it's that little exercise of how quickly could you find those books without looking at the index at the front. I knew that would happen. Thank you. The Romans practiced with their swords for 4 hours a day. Double weight sword rather. Double weight shield. The shield has one handle. If I don't pick it up and carry it, I don't have it. Think about that with your faith. If you don't pick your faith up and carry it with you, you don't have it. You can't put your faith down. You have to have it in your hand. And your faith isn't just there to defend you. It's there as a weapon as well. Verse 17. And take the helmet of salvation. This helmet of salvation, it protects our head, our brain, our thoughts. It's crucial. Remember what Paul said? Take up the whole armour of God. You can't leave your faith behind because the shield's too heavy. You can't take your helmet off because it's a hot, warm evening. You need all of the equipment to be fully protected. The sword of the Spirit. Here we have the Word of God. Here we have the need to do regular sword practice. To do our reading so that we know and we remember and we learn from the Scriptures. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication from all the saints. You see, we need the whole armour of God. A couple of things that we alluded to that isn't here. You see, the armour here, what Paul is envisaging, is a Roman soldier going into battle. Not on the march, not going about his daily business, but he's ready and he's going into battle. And therefore, this is the equipment that he needs. In Isaiah, we read about a similar thing. Isaiah 56. Sorry, it's not, it's Isaiah 59. In Isaiah 59 we have a similar passage. It's perhaps where Paul gets his idea from when he writes to the Ephesians. Halfway through verse 15. Then the Lord saw it and it displeased him that there was no justice. He saw that there was no man and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his own arm brought salvation for him, and his own righteousness, it sustained him. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate, and a helmet of salvation on his head. He put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak. And so we have, as I showed you, the painula, the cloak to go around me when it's cold, to wrap around me and to keep me functioning, to keep me warm. That zeal is what keeps you going when going gets tough. But there was one other thing, wasn't there? The impedimenta. Here we have in Ephesians chapter 6 a lean, trained, fit Roman soldier. That's how we should be. But the Lord Jesus tells us, doesn't he, to put down the things that we own, to put aside the things that we carry. The impedimenta was brought in by a Roman guard, general called Marius, just about 100 years before Christ. And he'd noticed that his Roman legions were becoming heavy, slow, because they had wagon trains of goods to bring with them. They were no longer a lean, fit army that could move quickly and agilely. They moved slowly because they needed all the stuff that they brought with them. So, if you became a Roman soldier and you were married, the first bit of baggage you got rid of was your wife. You had an instant divorce. You were not allowed to be a married man. Paul exhorts us, doesn't he, that if we can, to be single. Because that way we are single-minded towards the truth. But he acknowledges that not everybody can live that way. The impedimenta carried for the Roman soldier all his worldly goods. Marius said, if you want it, you carry it. It's where, as I said, we get the word impede from. So for our last exhortation, let's just think about all the worldly goods that we have that impede us in our walk to the kingdom. that slow us down, that get in the way of us proclaiming the love for the Lord that we had. For we must put that aside. We must be a lean soldier in Christ with the whole armour of God to protect us against the wiles of the devil. And as we walk towards the kingdom and we face the trials and tribulations that life throws at us, with our brethren and sisters soldiers at our shoulders, at either side of us, to help us, to walk with us, we can all walk successfully to the kingdom as we wait for our Lord Jesus to return. Thank you for listening.